Ever wondered what it's like to do a river cruise on the mighty Mississippi? Believe us, it's no ordinary cruise because it's no ordinary river, and we certainly weren't on any ordinary boat. You're going to love what we're going to show you. We travelled to the deep south to see what all the hype was about, and we joined the river at the birthplace of rock and roll, and finished where he meets the sea at the birthplace of jazz. And we're going to show you this incredible voyage right now as we sail on board the world's largest, and arguably the prettiest riverboat, American Queen. So prepare yourself for gorgeous plantations, quirky wildlife, haunted mansions, dark history, cooking with royalty, and some pretty dodgy singing. Let's go!
Hello, and welcome to our review of our voyage on the Mississippi with American Queen Voyages.
Yes, we have already done some American Queen content. As you can see, we've got a ship tour of the American Queen, which is actually, did you know this? The largest by passenger capacity river ship in the world.
It's a boat.
Oh, it is. A paddle steamer, no doubt.
Yeah. So that was a really hard thing to get used to saying, was calling it a boat and not a ship, but it is technically a boat.
It's a steamboat.
Yeah.
We went from Memphis to New Orleans and stayed in some really, really fabulous places on the way down. But I've got to tell you now, it's the most American thing I think we've ever done. The Mississippi, am I allowed to call it the Deep South? Because to us Brits, that to us is the Deep South, isn't it?
Yeah, it's iconically.
It's iconically Deep South, and the voyage we were really looking forward to do because it's just such a, for us, outside of the US, it's such a sort of an iconic American thing, isn't it? The area and the visuals and the houses and the cotton plantations and the history, everything is so American. So it really kind of lit a fire in our curiosity, didn't it?
So we were on board for a week. Like Richard said, we boarded in Memphis, but part of the package when you book with American Queen is that you have a pre-cruise night in whichever city you're starting in. So if you started in New Orleans, you'd have a night in New Orleans. We started in Memphis, so we had our pre-cruise night in Memphis in the rather wonderful Peabody Hotel.
When you talk about Memphis hotels, the Peabody is the most iconic and the most famous hotel in Memphis, and probably the surrounding area, to be fair. It's got the biggest history anyway. Yeah,
and we decided to tag on another night at the Peabody so that we had a bit of time in Memphis. So we had like a full day there.
And the ducks.
Yeah, the duck parade. So the duck parade happens twice a day. So the ducks live up on the roof in a little duck palace. And the duck master brings the ducks down.
Is that what he's called?
I think so.
It's called the duck master.
Yeah. He brings the ducks down in the elevator from the roof through and parades them through the hall and then leaves them in the fountain. And then they stay there all day, swimming around. And then in the evening, I think it's about 5 o'clock, he takes them back up to their little duck palace again.
You've got to see it to believe it.
Yeah,
because I didn't believe it actually.
I think there's quite a lot of history behind why it's done and things.
Why are there ducks at the Peabody Hotel? Why do they live on the roof? Why do they come down the elevator? Why do they swim in the little pool in the... What's it called then?
The lobby.
The lobby.
The lobby. So they're there all day.
And they stay there all day, just sort of like kicking around and saying hello to people.
It obviously attracts lots of children and lots of non-hotel residents, so it gets really busy. So if you really want to see it, make sure that you get there nice and early. Yeah. And yeah, it's just such fun. Yeah. Also, while we were in Memphis, we managed to walk up to Sun Studio.
Oh, there's some really iconic places in Memphis, isn't there?
Yeah.
Without mentioning the E word.
Yeah.
And the G-land word at the moment.
Well, we'll go on to that.
Yeah.
But while we were there, we managed to... Well, the first thing we did when we were there was we walked down to the river to see the ships, where the ships dock. So that was really nice. And there was... the American Queen's sister was in when we arrived.
Yeah, was that the Duchess?
The Duchess, I think, was there. So we walked down to that and we had a little walk along the river. We walked the other way, about a mile up the road to Sun Studio. If
you go to Memphis and you're a music fan, Sun Studio is literally the birthplace of rock and roll.
Yeah.
You know, as it was in the 50s and the 60s, and it's almost like a pilgrimage to go there. I'm a massive rock music fan, and it was just, it sent chills down the back of your spine to be somewhere where Elvis recorded his first tracks and he first gained attention of the media and the world from there. And it's just to be in the very room that, oh my goodness.
Yeah. And the tours are relatively cheap. I can't remember how much it was, $10, $20. It wasn't even that much, was it? And we just rocked up and booked on the next tour and went round, and it was really interesting.
It was weird. It felt really low-key for something so iconic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we also spent some time on Beale Street and went to BB King's and listened to some music at BB King's. Again, there was sort of a cover charge to get into BB King's. I think it was $10 each. But yeah, well worth doing. It was really fun.
Is that the original place for BB King's? I'm going to have to find that out.
I don't know.
The BB King's Blues Club. Because obviously BB King and Memphis sort of go hand in hand. And if you want to do like touristy, iconic things, you know, Sun Studio in the morning, Beale Street in the afternoon, evening, I would say, because in the evening on Beale Street, you see all the neon signs, and the whole place lights up. Hordes of people all out eating and drinking. It's a really nice sort of atmosphere, really.
Yeah.
And BB King's, to us, was the place to go. There's lots of other famous eateries down there, I suppose, and shops, but to us, BB King's was the one. So it was a fabulous evening.
And then while we were at the hotel, it gave us the opportunity to check in for our voyage. So everybody who was on the cruise was obviously staying there, and we all checked in so that when we boarded the ship, we literally had everything we needed.
Yeah,
so,
it was all done.
And we were given our room keys and everything before we even boarded the ship. So that was great. So
that was good. Just saved a lot of hassle the next day, didn't it?
The morning that we were boarding, there was a number of options, but we chose to pay for an excursion to Graceland. So we got up that morning quite early and boarded a coach, and off we trotted to Graceland.
If you go to Memphis and don't bother with Graceland, it's like going to New York and not bother getting off the plane, basically. I mean, you have to do Graceland if you're doing Memphis.
And we've
really
got a whole separate video on Graceland, so we'll put a link to that and you can watch that.
And there's one fact I remember, actually. Graceland is the second most visited house in the US after the White House. It's a big thing, and it's obviously a big thing and a big deal for Memphis as well. And
us going there, having been to Sun Studio the day before, and you know, Beale Street, and obviously staying in the Peabody, where Elvis signed his first contract, I think. So it was really nice to just do that, and it sort of brought a lot of it all together.
If you watch Baz Luhrmann's film Elvis, which we really enjoyed actually, and it gave us a special sort of enjoyment knowing we were there. There's lots of scenes in Beale Street, there's lots of scenes in Graceland, obviously, and there's even the Peabody in there as well, isn't there? So it all centres around that, and it was such a... Oh, it's just giving me the chills thinking about it. It was a brilliant time, and that's before we've got on the boat. Being in the presence of the king, as they say, was just amazing. And actually, American Queen organised the tour, and we all got on the coach from the Peabody. And we all went to Graceland, and then we went straight to the ship.
So mid-afternoon, we were boarding the American Queen.
Well, what a delight that was. I have to say at this point, okay, and this is unusual, the area was going through a particularly bad heat wave.
Yes.
The week we were there, literally the week we were there. And it's not seasonally normally that hot. It was like 90 degrees plus every single day, and the humidity was like 95% as well. It was so difficult to breathe. It was very, very difficult to sort of normally enjoy the outside areas because it was so stifling. That's not something that obviously American Queen have any control over.
And thankfully the air conditioning in the inside of the ship was amazing. So the inside of the ship was
really
very comfortable.
Just don't go outside much. It should have been okay, but it was just circumstance. There's nothing you can do about that, is there?
So we'll start off with talking about the itinerary, and generally the boat tended to leave whichever city it had been in for the day about 5 o'clock in the evening. We'd sort of set sail, and then depending on how far along the river we were going, sometimes not very far at all, sometimes a little bit longer, we would usually dock later that evening at some point. So it might be before we went to bed, or it might be during the night. So wherever you woke up the next morning was where you were. Okay,
so we boarded the ship, and a completely different style of ship to we've ever been on. It's a traditional paddle boat steamer. It's the largest paddle boat steamer ever constructed, I think, in the world, certainly in existence today. And it's a proper paddle boat steamer as well. It's a proper steamboat. They have steam engines, and
steam smokestacks.
Steam smokestacks, and they have a giant paddle wheel at the back. And that's how it gets its motion. There's no diesel engine backup. It's what it is. And that makes it so authentic and so lovely to do that traditional kind of route on a traditional boat, going through you know, a sort of an iconic route, really. And the boarding on a steamboat is quite different, isn't it? Because you board from these kind of like gangways from the front of the ship, off the bow, and they sort of swing them across to land, because they land near levees, which is on these sort of large sort of rises on the side of the Mississippi banks. And you come out of this, you come out of the front of the ship and you go down this big grand staircase outside.
With a big red,
big red carpet.
Yeah.
It's totally unique.
Yeah.
You know.
And then they just plonk the gangplank onto the ground, don't they? And you
I mean, we've been on 50 cruises. It's the most unique cruise we've ever been on, I think.
Yeah.
The most fascinating from a historical perspective, and also just kind of like wide-eyed wonderment. It's like, whoa, this is something else.
So shall we talk a little bit about the itinerary, and then we can talk a bit about the experience of actually being on the ship?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Yep. Just to recap, we started in Memphis and went all the way down to New Orleans. Where did we stop, just briefly?
We stopped in a place called TERRENE Landing, which was sort of the gateway to Cleveland. And we went to a lovely little town called VICKSBURG. We also went to NATCHEZ, which was one of my favourites. Then we went to St. FRANCISVILLE, Baton Rouge, NOTTOWAY, and finished in New Orleans. So one stop a day.
One thing that really stood out about the way we stopped and the excursions and the destinations and everything was the way that American Queen organised the buses. It's one of those little design features of a cruise that I found really unique about American Queen, and actually one of the most enjoyable, one of the most well organised, and I honestly don't understand why certainly river cruise companies don't adopt exactly the same principle. And I'll explain this.
Yeah.
Basically, the American Queen uses a hop-on, hop-off bus system, and it's all their own, so they don't get any outside in, do they?
No, the bus follows you.
The bus actually follows you all the way down the river.
Yeah.
So they'll leave you in the night, and then they'll end up. And I think lots of river cruises do that as well. They use their own buses.
Yeah. So this is a little bit unusual. They're not excursions as such. They offer this sort of like...
It's hop on, hop off.
Yeah.
So what they do is they give you a map at the beginning of the day which shows you all the destinations on the hop on, hop off circuit, if you like. Those coaches just go round that circuit all day. So you are literally free just to get off with your map, and the American Queen will put down these stops of points of interest in the place that you're in, and you will just get off at your leisure, get on at your leisure. You know the timetable, you know when the buses are going to come. It's fabulous because each day is a kind of like, what do you want to do? Let's personalise this to our own taste. So I want to do this museum, or I want to go on that and go and see that and this, that and the other. Or we can do as much or as little as you like, and it's all included.
Yeah, even when you get off, if it's a stop at a museum or one of the plantation houses, or that's all included. So you literally just get off of the bus, you walk into the museum, and whoever's on the desk, they will say, oh, are you with American Queen? And they let you in.
They let you in, it's fabulous.
And obviously you can walk between some of the points, so if you wanted to just, you know, explore a bit, you don't have to get on at the stop that you get off at. You can walk to the next stop, or, you know, whatever you want to do.
But they do that every single day.
Yeah.
And it's fabulous. And so you haven't got to wake up worrying about whether you've booked an excursion or whether you're going to miss out on something, because it's available to all. And there are excursions, there are paid excursions, because when we were in NATCHEZ, we did one, and we'll come on to that in a little while. But it's just such a fabulous way of doing it, I think.
Yeah.
And, you know, hats off to American Queen. They've really got it on pat as well, really well designed, really well organised.
And like Richard said, it's really nice. You can shape your day to whatever your interests are. So if you're particularly interested in museums, you can go to the museums. If you like
music, and you can see the whatever it is, and
pick out which stops you get off at and which ones you want to miss out on. And depending on where you were, sometimes there would be, you know, a dozen stops, wouldn't there? Choices of things that you could do.
It's just really, really good. And that was one of the highlights of the whole thing for me, the ease of it.
Yeah. And like Richard says, there were paid for excursions. Do you know what? We didn't really feel the need to do that, did we? Really? There was we found that the hop on, hop off gave us enough to see and do, and so it was brilliant. So our first stop was a little place called TERRENE Landing, which was just the most sort of remote. There was really literally nothing there. It was apparently they used to use it for bringing in the fish, and sort of an old fisherman's port. So not really anything there to get off and do on your own. There's really only two stops. One was the new Grammy Museum in Cleveland, and then there was also the chance to go into Cleveland city centre.
And we're here at the
Grammy Museum.
The only Grammy Museum outside of Los Angeles, put here because of all the musicians that hail from this area.
Yeah, there's more Grammy winners from Mississippi, the state, than any other state in America.
Yeah.
Who'd have thought?
So, yeah, so they've built a whole new museum, which looks amazing, and it's included in our hop-on, hop-off excursion. So we've got a ticket entrance. So we're now going to go in and have a look
around the Grammy Museum. I mean, it's really hot here. It's like 95 degrees today, and I don't think we're going to last particularly long, are we?
No, it's cool in there. Yeah.
Let's go inside and see what we can show you. Shall we?
Mm-hmm.
Go.
That was an interesting museum, and of course it was gratis, as they say. We just sort of rock up and say you're with the Queen, and they let you in, don't they? I'm with the Queen.
And it was incredibly quiet when we were there, wasn't it?
It was very good.
So quiet.
Very good. So that was really nice. That was actually quite a lazy date, but it was so hot. So when we came out of the museum, it was like, oh.
Yeah, we can't go into town.
Oh my God, it's so flipping hot.
It was a really good museum. There was lots of interaction things.
Yeah,
I mean, I recorded a song, didn't I? Do you remember?
If I got footage of that, and don't tell Helen, I'll slip it in now.
No, you won't.
Yes, I will.
This is the first time I've ever seen Helen do anything musical.
I can be deadly when I find somebody lovely. And now I'm ready like a kitty in a dress.
Anyway, so that was our first day. The next day we were in a lovely little town called VICKSBURG.
Good morning. Good morning. As you can tell, Helen's very excited. She's hitting all the right notes today in VICKSBURG, and we're now about to go into
over here, and then you'll be able
a mansion.
Look back at it. Look. It's now well, it's open for tours, but it's also a bed and breakfast, so you can come and stay here.
It's really hot today, though. It's
really
like 100 degrees.
33 degrees.
33 degrees. Not quite 100 yet.
It's going to get
That's
hotter.
about 96.
I mean, it's 10
o'clock.
10 o'clock in the morning, so it's going to get hotter.
So we're doing all the stuff this morning, and then we're going to
go back,
race back and
chill. Hopefully chill. Probably have to sit in a air-conditioned room.
Yeah, can't sit outside. Whoa.
Again, all these little towns along the Mississippi. It's a strange area because it's very historic, and it's quite very low key. You know, there's not any big industry there or anything like that. It's very, very low key, and all the towns are really sort of small and quaint. And obviously, if you're used to watching sort of American historical dramas and things like that, you know, it really hit home. These towns are so pretty.
But VICKSBURG was like it was really a significant town, I think, in the Civil War, wasn't it? So they said that if the North managed to capture VICKSBURG, that would be the end of the war, because it was one of the hardest places to capture. So it's really interesting. So there was we went to a couple of antebellum mansions in the town.
We did.
And then we went to a small Civil War museum.
Yeah. That was a private museum, wasn't it? It was a private museum.
And we also visited there the Coca-Cola factory.
Yeah, that was a strange thing. That was the first bottling factory of Coca-Cola ever. They used to sell Coca-Cola from fountains, sort of soda fountains, didn't they? No one actually could buy it in bottles or cans or anything like that. There was a guy invented a method of bottling the Coca-Cola, made an absolute blooming fortune, didn't he? Because he was like the first person. And of course the rest is history.
That was our day in VICKSBURG.
In VICKSBURG. Now the next day, you reckon is the highlight of the week for you?
Probably my second highlight, but we'll come on to
your highlight, your highest highlight.
Yeah.
And this was a place called NATCHEZ.
Yeah, which was a beautiful little town. Absolutely beautiful.
Yep. Now, we met somebody called Chef Regina, and she is the culinary ambassador for American Queen Voyages. And we were lucky enough to be invited to her kitchen, which is based in NATCHEZ. Yeah. It's a high street kitchen. I mean, it was a gorgeous little place, actually. And we learnt how to make American biscuits.
She is the queen of
She's
the biscuit.
called the Biscuit Queen of NATCHEZ, isn't she?
Yeah.
And she's been on TV and she's written loads of books. And she's like a celebrity chef, really, isn't she?
And by biscuit, we're obviously talking American biscuits.
Yeah,
so
we're not talking about bourbons or custard creams.
If you're in the UK, we're not talking like cookie biscuits. We're talking like...
We would call them scones. They're very similar to scone. I mean, I would say they've got the DNA of a scone.
Yeah, they're not the same as a scone, but they're what you have with what they call gravy, which is like a white sauce.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
they
For
serve...
Americans watching, well, we sound like we're weirding out by it's perfectly normal for you. I apologise. Because gravy here is kind of brown and savoury, and yours is like white and creamy.
Yeah. But every morning on the boat, I would have biscuits and gravy. Sometimes the gravy has like chopped up bits of sausages in it. We're teaching Americans to suck eggs, but to the Brits, it's, you know...
Or to chop sausage. Whatever. And then we learned how to... She talked us through her secrets of making the perfect biscuit.
And there was about 8 of us, and we all had a go at folding the biscuits in the way that she said.
Now, that was a chargeable excursion, wasn't it?
Yes.
That was a chargeable one. So it's one of the very few that we would recommend, actually, because it was such an enjoyable time. And it was really sweet, because the bin men came past, and she went out there with a plate of biscuits, and they all stopped, and they all came over and had their biscuits. And apparently she does that every week for them.
And
she's like, I mean, it's not only she's the biscuit queen of NATCHEZ, I think she's the queen of NATCHEZ.
Such a lovely lady.
She's so generous and kind.
She actually came on the boat later in the afternoon to do that sort of demonstration on the boat in the theatre. So that, and I went along. I loved her so much. I just went along to that as well in the afternoon. Yeah. But that was interesting. And then because of where her kitchen was, right in the heart of the town, by the time we'd finished with her sort of late morning, we still then had a chance to go and wander around the town. And
it was lovely. Perfect weather really for it.
Yeah, we visited a couple more of the antebellum mansions in NATCHEZ. Beautiful houses. So we visited a couple more of them. Some lovely gardens. That was a lovely day. Beautiful, beautiful place.
How do you follow that? Well, we went to a place called St. Francisville, and we started off in was it a plantation?
It was an iodine plantation. So yeah, it was an old iodine plantation. It was a little bit out of the town. Again, this was one of those places where we actually had to drive quite a way. In NATCHEZ, we'd sort of been right in the heart of the town. Here we had to sort of drive a bit of the way. And the plantation was on the outskirts of the town. Yes.
And little did we know when we did the tour that it is one of the most haunted houses in the whole of the US.
It's got quite a gruesome history.
Really gruesome. Not nice at all. You need to go there and actually learn the history of the place and the way they tell it, because they don't perform it. They make most of the atmosphere, and actually it's very chilling indeed.
Yeah, the guides there were brilliant. They really make a drama out of it. It was really busy.
Oh, it was a drama.
Yeah, it was one of the more busy places we went to. So lots of people off of the ship as well on that tour. So
and I was kind of like half expecting when we came back and saw our footage that there was going to be something in the background. Something there that we hadn't noticed before. That chills the marrow in our bones.
But while we were waiting for that tour, do you remember while we were waiting for that tour, we were invited into the kitchen? I mean, you can stay in this plantation if you wanted to. If you were the sort of person that likes to stay in haunted places, you could stay there. I wouldn't. So they have this beautiful cafe restaurant thing which they let us go into and have a cup of coffee and that before our tour started, and there was that most delicious bread and butter pudding with little pots of bread
and butter pudding bites.
It's delicious. So I'm sure if you stayed there you'd get fed very well. It looked lovely.
Would, although you'd be scared witless and you wouldn't want to eat anything. You'd have no appetite. What was that? You'd have no appetite.
And from there we then went into the town itself, into St. Francisville, which was just the quaintest little...
I know. What is it with these towns? They are so beautiful, and the gardens and everything is so well kept. There's not many people live around there at all. You know, only a few thousand. Quite incredible, isn't it, really?
I mean, for me, it was just like being on the set of a movie, the way we'd expect one of these towns. So, you know, you'd walk along, there's all these shiplap houses, they're all in beautiful colours with the verandas and rocking chairs and just how you imagine it to be, and it was just so beautiful. It was
either Bridgerton, American version, or something out of a horror film by Stephen King.
So all I could think of when we were walking through these towns was like Forrest Gump.
Forrest Gump.
It was just so Forrest Gumpy.
Gumpy. Are you getting a pattern here? This is it's just such a interesting itinerary, even though you're not doing many escorted tours or planned excursions, because the actual destinations themselves are so interesting to us. I mean, we've had comments on our YouTube channel and that from people from the areas and from the sort of south of the US saying it's not very interesting at all. You know, the Mississippi is the most boring place ever. But if you're not from there, you know, all you know is from films and movies and history, and because the history is gruesome and grisly and horrible. But to us, it's absolutely fascinating. But to the locals, it's like, I don't even know why you're here. You know, what?
It's such pretty towns to us. So I suppose they're quite unusual. So,
yeah, they are.
Yeah, so that was day 5, I think, and then, or day 4. Then we went on to Baton Rouge.
Baton Rouge is one of the larger places, isn't it?
Which is the capital of the
area. And we went through so many states, didn't we?
We did.
We did, actually. I can't remember what state we're at now with Baton Rouge.
No.
It could be anything, couldn't it? I don't think it was Mississippi.
No, I don't think it was Mississippi.
No. We'll put it up in the captions.
Yeah. But it was the capital of whatever.
Capital of whatever.
The coach took us round the city, didn't it?
Lots of huge, kind of impressive buildings, actually. Didn't we go in the library there or a museum there?
Yeah.
And it was opposite, like, Capitol Building, and
that's right.
Really big and grand, actually. So, yeah, that was a very interesting...
So quite a lot of significant sort of governmental history in Baton Rouge. So lots of statues and, like Richard says, the Capitol building, which was really impressive. OK,
our last full day, actually, was a place, did they save the best plantation house till last?
Yes.
Do you think so, in your opinion? And we were docked at the NOTTOWAY plantation, which is just over the levee. So it's actually walking distance from the ship.
No coaches that day.
Good morning from NOTTOWAY Mansion, and it's the last full day of our cruise, and we've got a treat today, look.
We're not having to vlog.
Yeah.
Oh,
we have been offered a buggy ride up to the mansion. How cool is that? They've got these golf carts that they bring out every stop, and basically people that are not quite able to do the walkie bit, they get this rather lovely, luxurious ride to where they need to go. So look at that.
Wow, it's even more impressive when you get up close.
I should stop on the top of those easy.
Yeah, no, we'll walk up. We'll walk up and take some pictures when we leave. It's fine.
Okay. Wow. I feel so lazy. So we're at the mansion now, and we're being dropped off by our personal chauffeur, and we're going to take a look around. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You went on the, well, we both went on the tour, didn't we? But you sort of did slightly more than I did in terms of the tour, because you wanted to act out your little southern fantasy of standing on a balcony.
Yeah, so again, the tour was curated by this guy that was a beautiful storyteller.
Yeah.
Lots of stories about the house.
And I've got to say, these houses are full of people in period costume, and they're all volunteers. And people are just so in love with the history, and they want to communicate it to visitors. They're great people, they're so friendly, and they've all got this really rich, deep South accent, haven't they? And because they've got their kind of period costumes on as well.
And there's so few that the houses are obviously, you know, getting old now, and they're made of wood, and they cost so much to maintain that there's actually not many of them left in really good condition. So this was a beautiful, it was massive house, massive beautiful gardens, beautiful verandas. I mean, like Richard said, I said to the guy when he'd finished our tour, there was a window you had to lift to go out onto the veranda. I said, can I just go and stand on that veranda and pretend like I'm Scarlett O'Hara?
And we have to say at this point, Helen loves Gone with the Wind, right? But we're very respectful of the past.
That was the thing about the tour. They were very sympathetic.
They were to the slavery and the cruelty and everything.
So I think that they acknowledge how it's a bad period of their history, but they don't want to sweep it under the carpet and let it be forgotten.
They need to preserve the slave houses and the accommodations and the plantations themselves, because people need to realise how bad it was for millions of people.
One of the places we went to that Rural Life Museum. You could actually look at the slave accommodation. You could see how awful it really was.
Which you can see on the pictures we are overlaying now.
Yeah.
You have to learn about the dark history.
I think that was one of the things that most surprised me about this voyage, actually, was how much history we sort of learn and just picked up along the way just from visiting all these places and you know, the significance of them in the Civil War and in freeing slaves and plantation history, everything. It was just such an interesting place. So that was a highlight for me. It was just a beautiful plantation, and apart from seeing 2 snakes in the garden, which we won't go into, because I'm terrified of snakes.
Never seen Helen run so fast.
It was
especially in that heat.
Just a beautiful house, and the guide was just the most entertaining man. And again, you can stay there. So
yeah, that's true.
He showed us some of the sort of bed and breakfast rooms, and
the bedrooms actually, because they were all actually very in keeping with the American Queen steamship. They were very of the period.
Yeah, well, it sort of restored them.
Yeah, they
for the old masters of the house. So this was the master's bedroom, and this was the you know. So they were all sort of themed, which was lovely.
I had a poke in quite a few of them when you'd all gone off. So
when you were bored with the tour.
Well, no, it's just needed to show everybody.
Or while I was sweet talking the man to let me out onto
the
veranda.
balcony. Oh my giddy aunt! I thought I'm done with this. She can make a fool of herself. I'm just going to walk away.
I didn't go as far as asking them to borrow a costume. That would have been fun. I thought about it, but...
See what I have to live with? Oh.
And then the next day we arrived in New Orleans. So we docked very early in New Orleans. It was an interesting sailing. It had been interesting watching the river change as we approached New Orleans. It had come from being very, very rural to more industrial, and as we approached New Orleans, between Nottoway and New Orleans, it just completely changed, didn't
Incredible. It just became more and more back into the 21st century as you went down the river. It's
and
really
just
strange.
to add to the atmosphere,
It's like
we
a time machine.
Magnificent storm, didn't we? That
we
evening?
did.
It was beautiful.
Yeah,
so,
lightning over the river.
Yeah, it was interesting.
There was a dark beauty about it.
And we obviously then stayed in New Orleans.
Well, we couldn't go all that way without staying somewhere so famous and so iconic and having a look around.
Yeah.
To be honest.
As New Orleans was our disembarkation port and as such wasn't part of the included American Queen Voyages experience, we're releasing 24 Hours in New Orleans as a separate video, and we'll leave a link at the end when it's released.
Anyway, if you want to know more about the American Queen, obviously look up the American Queen online, but watch these videos next because these are the ones we've done before. And we think they're great.
And thank you to American Queen for inviting us on. We had a fabulous time.
We had a wonderful time. Thank you, American Queen Voyages. And yeah, watch these next to continue your journey on the American Queen. Goodbye for now.
Bye.